From Cypress Radio in Cypress, Texas, you've tuned into the Special Ed Section 504 Radio Hour, and I'm your host, Louis Geigerman. Welcome back. This week, we're going to talk about parent empowerment. I can tell you from my special education practice, it's very common for parents to have difficulty with some districts. And sometimes it seems like it's frustrating. Sometimes we have districts that will, instead of trying to be workable with parents, sometimes they'll just, without batting an eye, come back and sue us. We'll see you in court. We have an advantage. We don't care how much money we spend. We'll do what we have to do to litigate against you. And I think that's kind of what we're seeing here in this one case. And I'm bringing on a parent by the name of Marta Brain. And Marta is with a group in the Clear Creek Independent School District, which is south of Houston. It encompasses the area around NASA Johnson Space Center in the Houston area. And I brought Marta on to talk about what her and a group of parents are doing, with the idea that this is something that maybe other parents across the country can duplicate. So with no further ado, welcome, Marta, to the Special Ed Section 504 Radio Hour.
Hi, Louis. It's nice to be here.
Great. Marta, tell me a little bit about your background and how we got to this situation where we are today with your group.
Sure. So I am a stay-at-home mom. I have two kids, a boy, age 8, and a girl, age 6, and both of them are on the autism spectrum. My son is moderate to severe, and my daughter is high-functioning. So my son has been in several different special education settings in school. He's been in several different school settings. There's been a lot of shuffling around, and so I've been in, I want to say, 5 different elementary schools between my two kids, worked with countless teachers and therapists, paraprofessionals, and admin, and it's given me just a little bit of insight into how some of all of that works when you have good admin and teachers and good communication, and then when you have a campus that maybe doesn't communicate as well. So I was on a Facebook group page that was specifically for children with special needs in our school district, which is Clear Creek ISD, and some parents and I began a conversation. We're starting to notice that we saw a lot of the same trends and patterns. Each of us had been dealing with some very similar things. And so we decided, we would just meet for coffee. This was about 8 weeks ago. And after that, we felt like, you know what, there's a lot more people than we realize that are having a lot of these same struggles. So we formed a group called Parents for CCISD Special Education Reform. And we have just been doing research and investigating, and we created a survey that we circulated out to as many parents as we could reach that we know through our different groups and walks of life. And then we collected the data and started realizing that there were some serious problems happening within the district for a lot of special education kids. So that's kind of how it started. Now we are a group of over 100 parents. There's a few staff as well that all have some of the same concerns about what's happening in the special education program, and we're continuing to grow. And this has been about a month since I started meeting with these other moms. We started the group and basically got to over 100 members in about a month.
Well, that's amazing. Tell me some of the data that you were able to derive and some of the things that you found that were going on in the district.
Well, like I said, we circulated a survey, and we had over 60 parents and a couple staff that filled that out, and it was not anonymous. We wanted to make sure that we could verify the authenticity of the data. So they provided testimony and evidence. We also have police reports as well as federal investigation reports, along with data from CCISD and TEA through open public information requests. A lot of what we saw were there was a lot of abuse happening. Children were coming home with unexplained bruises. Children were being placed in what's considered by the district a calm-down room, but it's being used for punitive purposes, solitary confinement. Some of them are padded, and some of them are closets that have cement floors, and there was one child that was left in there for hours. That's illegal for one thing, but it's very alarming the number of kids that were reported to have been physically or emotionally harmed from the parents, as well as from some of the other data that we've collected. We've also seen just some adversarial culture. The law firm that the district uses, Rogers, Morris & Grover legal firm, has done a lot of due process cases. So the district has spent over $900,000 on these attorneys' fees over the past 5 years.
How much did you say that they had spent?
$900,000 within the past 5 years to fight special needs parents that are trying to advocate. And we also saw some cases where false allegations of CPS were made by the district. There were a couple instances where a parent testified that their child was abused on a school campus, and then the school called CPS on the parents. CPS immediately dropped the charges and told the parent to file a complaint with the TEA because they knew that it was not legitimate. And there were several instances where that happened. There were instances of reverse due process where the school district sued parents because they were pursuing an evaluation, whether it was a full individual evaluation or an independent education evaluation. There's multiple times where that has happened as well. And then we saw a lot of cover-ups. We saw that any parent that goes to due process with CCISD is they basically have to settle because CCISD has deeper pockets than special needs parents do. And so at some point, they have to settle. Now, parents are not getting any kind of money out of this. When I say settlement, they're getting the services that they're asking for. So in one case, that was tutoring, and they were able to get that for a year for their child after having paid $20,000 to go to court. In another case, it might be occupational therapy or some other kind of support for their child. But they get a year of these services and are forced to sign some kind of confidentiality or non-disclosure agreement. Every settlement case that CCISD does comes with a confidentiality agreement, and it's placed on the parent as well as the child. So if a child has been abused in some way, they're not able to even talk about what happened to them. So these cover-ups are silencing victims. There's been instances where parents were denied access to video footage when they were concerned about, something that may have happened at school, and they wanted to see the footage. They were denied. There's also been, just even with on campus, there's been children that have eloped off of the campus. And for those that don't know what elope means, that means we've gotten away from, we ran away. Some children with special needs, especially with some sensory sensitivities, they have that fight or flight mode, and they just go into flight mode and they just take off. And there's been a couple instances where a child took off and the school wasn't even aware that the child had left the campus. One child had eloped off campus, and fortunately, a passersby saw them, called the police, and the police were able to escort the child safely back onto the campus. But there is a police report. We have that in our evidence. We have that indeed did happen. There's been another case where a child was lost on some kind of an extracurricular or field trip outing, and the school was unaware that that had happened. And a lot of times I think that that's due to a result of a lack of support for the teachers, and that's something else that we're kind of seeing a trend in. Some of our self-contained special education classes have teachers that are just overwhelmed and not given the proper training or the resources or enough aids to help with the workload. My son in particular is in a class. It's a structured learning lab, and this type of a class, it's for elementary. It is kindergarten through 5th grade. So this teacher is responsible for teaching every grade curriculum. This teacher is responsible for adhering to each child's individual education plan, any kind of modifications that go along with that. And because this is a class designed for autism, there's an autism supplement as well that they have to follow. So that's a lot. And if there's not enough resources, there's not enough paraprofessionals in the classroom, it's very unsustainable. And there were some teachers that filled out the survey that talked about how they were unable to have a conference period or a duty-free lunch because of the demands of their workload. And so we're also advocating for that, because there are some wonderful special needs teachers out there, but anybody would burn out in that kind of a situation. We've also had instances where parents talked about not being able to talk with any paraprofessional, therapist, or aide that works directly one-on-one with their child. At least according to our district, we are only able to speak with the teacher. But most of the time, it's the paraprofessional that brings the child to the parent, takes them into the school if you're dropping them off or what have you. And so, there's a really big lack in communication. And so if a child does come home with, bruising or is struggling in a subject or, maybe even had a success, a parent isn't able to know what happens during the day because they're unable to talk with the paraprofessional. Only the teachers. But the teachers, aren't the ones bringing the children out. And there's just not a good, efficient communication log. And for a lot of us, our kids are just unable to communicate what their needs, what their wants are, what's happening in the classroom, the good, the bad, the ugly, if they had a good day, if they had a big success, if they made a new friend, or in some cases, if there have been instances of abuse. And so it's easy for these children to be preyed upon simply because they can't communicate, they can't advocate for themselves. And because a lot of this stuff has been happening for so long within this district, and most parents, I think, have just felt very isolated, not realizing that other people were struggling with these same things. Once we formed this group, more and more parents were realizing, hey, I'm dealing with this too. I'm not alone. Let's talk about this. Let's collaborate. Let's figure out what exactly is going on. What is the breakdown of the special education budget? What is the legal budget? How much is spent on due process and 504 fees for the special education 504 cases? And then we have an issue of placement. In our district, kids are constantly shuffled from one campus to another. And, young kids especially need consistency anyway, regardless of whether they have special needs or not. But when you have special needs, you need consistency that much more so. So, for example, my son was in 3 different schools in 3 different years. They were constantly shuffling him around, revamping the program, and that puts a strain on the family, having to either get their kid to 2 different schools, or they offer bus transportation, but a lot of the time, your kid is going to be on the bus for an hour. And some parents just have to do that because they have no other alternative. I'm fortunate enough to be a stay-at-home mom, and so I am able to take my son to school. But that's hard. That's already, that's additional stress on an already stressful situation. And then you have, I'm sorry?
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead.
Oh, and then you have instances where parents disagree with the placement that the district decides. I know that there was one parent that her children were going to be put in the alternative academics program, and that's more of a modified curriculum for intellectual learning disabilities. And it's great to have different programs for different needs, but her children didn't need to be in that class, and she was very vehement about that. She spoke with the teachers, spoke with the special education team leader, spoke with the vice principal and principal, just wasn't making any headway, went above, spoke with the director of special education and the executive director of special education, and then finally ended up going and speaking before the board. And finally, at that point, she was heard, and she was able to get her children placed where she needed them to be placed, which was in the structured learning lab, which helps them with some of the social deficiencies and some of the behaviors that go along with autism, but it's the same curriculum that you would find in the general education classes, which was a lot more appropriate for her children. And so there's lots of instances where parents disagree with what the placement is, but a lot of times, while you are a full member of the ARD by right, you're not treated as a full member. A lot of what you say as a parent gets disregarded. There are instances where children are fragile medically, and they have doctors and psychiatrists and surgeons giving instructions as to what needs to happen. But the school doesn't have to follow it. They can consider it, and most of the time they don't. And that's just crazy to me that, a school district could decide that they know better than, say, a neurosurgeon, that's their focus. So, some of those kind of policies don't seem to be in the best interest of the student. And those are the kinds of things that we want to look at, that we want to change. We had the opportunity to gather all of our information and do a presentation before 3 members of the board. They recommended that we meet with the superintendent. So we set up a meeting, and we did that, and basically decided we wanted to have an independent investigation, that there was enough evidence and data collected that we really needed to have somebody outside the district come in to evaluate what's going on, look into the upper administration in special education, look into all of these violations that have been reported. And so that is currently what we're trying to do. We are waiting on the superintendent to bring that up with the board and get back to us. And he said he would get back to us within 3 to 4 weeks. We're going to give him 2 and follow up and see kind of where we are with that process. But basically, that's kind of where we're at. We decided we need to have an independent investigation into the CCISD Special Education Program. We want to create a parent advisory commission that works closely with the board that would allow us to be more of a sounding board to be able to advocate the needs of these special needs parents directly to the board without having to go through all these hoops that way there can be a little bit more transparency, because, again, some of these kids, they're very fragile emotionally, medically, and you've got to have a direct line of communication. There needs to be some transparency. We're also asking for the removal of all gag orders, the confidentiality agreements, non-disclosure agreements that are on special needs children and families, because all that's doing is covering up abuse and silencing victims. And, the school district is a government entity, so it's one-sided. It's only the parent and the child that are gagged. And so we want to see the removal of that. We want to see more partnership with parents and open communication and transparency with the administration, with the teachers on a campus level, on a district level, and with the board. And that's ultimately our goal, is to provide a safe environment for all children to receive a quality education. That's what any parent wants. They want their children to be safe. They want their children to have a good education. And so that's ultimately our goal. And like I said, we really just kind of started the group about a month ago after the core admin, that's 4 of us, started meeting about 8 weeks ago. About a month ago is when we kind of started and formed our group and started circulating the survey and gathering evidence, and it's happened so fast. So clearly there's a systemic problem within this district.
I've had experience with this district for a long time, and some of the things that you are bringing to light were issues that were occurring, 10, 15, at least 10 years ago that I recollect. I remember there was a case where they had where the district had a seclusion room that clearly was not adhering to state guidelines regarding seclusion rooms. And it's a reporter that I know, Greg Grugan with Channel 26 here in Houston, did a story and an expose about that, and confronted at the time their counsel, and when the response on camera to the question about the seclusion room, which looked like something out of the Dark Ages, was like, oh, well, we saw this seclusion room that really was like a couldn't get out of there, by the way. They're under state law, they can put kids in seclusion rooms, but they have to be able to go and come as they want to in those rooms. And this was not the case then, but it was pretty clear that the attorney for the district was not able, and that wasn't representative for Rogers, Morton, and Grover. It was a in-house counsel. But I recollect the attorney said something to the effect, "Oh, well, we saw this as an opportunity to teach a life skill." What? I mean, that's exactly what she said. It's incredible. It's in the archives. I'm glad to share that with you. But that was just unbelievable. I think I have that footage still on my my special ed website. So some of those things are still going on, and it was like this was back in like 06, 07, somewhere.
That is sad.
Oh yeah. It's terrible stuff, but I think here's the thing that I think is interesting. Now, so the numbers that you said they spent $900,000 over the last 5 years on special ed alone. Is that correct?
Yeah, special ed and 504.
Okay, I got you. Special ed and 504. Well, I have personal experience. I was involved with a case. With Clear Creek, and I thought they were clearly wrong on an IEE issue, and basically and it was really, I don't think it was something that ever should have been litigated in the first place. It was clearly, I saw that clearly as a waste of money of the taxpayers' money that the district didn't agree to a request for independent educational evaluations. The district did not. The district. Well, instead of saying, they only have two choices in a case of independent educational evaluations. By the way, I was acting as an advocate in that case. I wasn't litigating that, but anyway, but in that case, the basic scenario was, they only, when you ask for an independent educational evaluation, they have only two things. It's only one of two options. Either yes, we'll do it, or no, we won't, and we'll defend our assessment and take it to hearing. And they chose option 3, do nothing. They had a phantom letter that they sent out, that we sent out, that said that they sent out that said, well, because you agreed with it originally, you don't have that right, which is not according to the statute. So they were required to file if they were going to defend that. Well, we ended up, and we gave them ample opportunity in an IEP meeting, and they just stonewalled. So I filed for due process in that case, and went to a hearing. It went to the hearing in February of 2017, and what do you know? Not only did the hearing officer side with us regarding the fund or file issue, because they had an absolute responsibility, they did not do that. They got hammered by the hearing officer on that. And number 2, they also were shown to have a denial of a free and appropriate public education of the student on top of it. So not only did they have to provide the independent educational evaluations, okay, but they also had a finding of a denial of a free and appropriate public education. They could have very easily had settled that case, provided the independent educational evaluations. So as a result, not only did they have to pay for the independent educational evaluations and provide compensatory educational services, but they also had to pay attorney's fees. They had to pay attorney's fees for the parents who brought the case, and they also had to pay their own fees to Rogers, Morton, or Grover. So, that was a case that I don't believe should have ever have been waged. It could have been dealt with a lot more expeditiously and considerably less to the taxpayer. But no, Dr. Cynthia Short digged her heels in, and along with and working with counsel, and they decided that they were going to litigate. And then they were found. The district was found to have denied FAPE and not provide the IE. That's a waste. And
it's absolutely a waste. Absolutely. I mean, it would have been cheaper just to provide the evaluation.
That would have gone a long way to making things go on, but no, they had to do that. And they really, frankly, what I heard in conversations with my associate that attended the resolution session, it was done to teach me a lesson because I requested all those IEs. That's what happened. So, I have some heartburn regarding that, and you know what? That was an issue where they had to, where it ended up the taxpayer had to handle that, but that should not have, that case should never have gone to a hearing. Then there was.
Well, they definitely try to use intimidation tactics and retaliation and aggressive tactics towards people that are working against what their agenda appears to be.
Oh, there was no doubt. So we knew that, and so we basically said, well, let's go for it. I mean, we cannot allow that, and we fought them, and we were successful. In another case that I'm aware of, here we had a case where there was a placement. This child was having some behavioral issues, but they had a placement that they put him in that the parent, they wanted to move him from a placement that actually, the district decided that they wanted to move this kid and move him out of a placement that everybody at the school believed was working. Okay, I mean, there was a placement that they put him in and it was working, but no, they wanted to move him into another placement that clearly wasn't working, and essentially, which made no sense at all. Well, they went ahead and they litigated that, and they lost that case. The district lost that case, and then that case is now an appeal. And I'm not mentioning the specific name in that case, but that case is still under appeal in federal court. Is that a case?
Yeah, and the problem is that CCISD, once a case has been won, they have insurance money that covers the cases for appeals. So they basically have endless resources to bankrupt parents.
Well, it would seem that way, and so they appealed it. They appealed that. They appealed it, and it's in federal court. But regardless, whether it's the insurance company, whether whoever is the one that's paying the bill, it's something that should not. It's something that should not have happened. It just flies in the face of reason, and it seems as though well, in our case did not get appealed. So that was left standing, but it was, it was clearly they had no possibility in an appeal. But subsequently, we've seen their response in an IEE request. I've seen time and time again where they've been filing on parents, which really is there to put out a chill to the parents, like, you go ahead against us, we're going to file against you. And so,
yeah, it's an intimidation tactic for sure. They're just trying to get you to withdraw it. And some parents do. Some parents are just tired of constantly having to fight because, special needs parents, we already have to deal with spending money for therapies, for doctor's appointments, having to fight with insurance. We're tired. We're tired of constantly having to fight. And when you feel like you're by yourself and you're having to fight against this government entity, it's most of the time most parents end up just withdrawing. There was one mom, her son was in my son's class, and the district decided they wanted to send her child to the Harris County Academic and Behavior East School because they couldn't.
They wanted to send
They did, and he's a 5-year-old. He's a kindergartner. He was placed in solitary confinement. He, at one point, this room, it didn't have a door, but it was covered with a mat by a paraprofessional, so the child could not get out. So he was literally in there with the clothes on his back. He would throw them over the opening. He would just strip down naked, throw his clothes over the opening, trying to get attention. He wanted out. And I actually had spoken with the teacher asking what the policy is for the calm down room. And they're not supposed to be in there for longer than 3 minutes. So he'd be in there for 3 minutes. He'd take his clothes off and, throw them out through the tiny opening in the top to try to get somebody's attention. And he got to the point where he was doing self-harm. He was urinating and defecating in there, all to get attention. And then if he rushed out or if he, did any kind of infraction, he immediately was placed back in. So this child was placed in cycles of solitary confinement. And then they decided the principal and the teacher were reaching out to upper administration, and Kevin Livingston decided that this child needed to go to ABC East. And so I decided to do some research on that. I did an open public information request through CCISD asking how much money they spend on slots at that school per year for the past 5 years. And they spend a ton of money every year on slots to that school. And that school, looked at it, it is surrounded by barbed wire. You're not allowed a backpack. There are no therapists. You walk through a metal detector with your pockets out turned. It's basically a prison. It's it's for delinquents, and yet they're trying to send this 5-year-old with special needs to school that is going to be a bigger classroom, that is not going to have any occupational therapists or speech therapists or motor labs or anything like that. And they're saying that it's for his best interest. And the mom vehemently refused, and the response she got was, well, it's either that or you take us to court. So she had no choice but to withdraw her child to homeschool, which is another point. Special education kids, I did another open public information request asking the number of special education children that have been withdrawn to either move to another district, be placed into a private or charter school, or to be homeschooled every year for the past 5 years. And the numbers are much higher for special education children as opposed to general education children. You also have data that suggests that special education children are punished disproportionately at higher rates than general education children. For example, when we found for kids that get expelled, special education children in CCISD make up 10% of the population. Well, there had been 10 children that had been expelled in general education. There had been 5 that had been expelled in special education. That's a huge percentage.
Yeah, it really is. I want to loop back on something.
Sure.
Is it ABC? Is it ABC East or is it ABS East? I think is it ABC East? I think it's ABS, but anyway, it's part.
Yeah, Academic and Behavior School. Some people call it Academic and Behavior Center.
I think it's ABS. I think it's ABS East, and there's 2 of them.
Mm-hmm.
But they're both run by Harris County. I'm actually aware of this scenario that you're talking about, where there has a line budgeted. I mean, they have actual slots that they pay for, and it's like they arbitrarily, if they don't have the round peg or the square peg that they're trying to put in the round hole, it's like an automatic. Oh, let's send them to ABS. Let's send them to ABS East. Now, the interesting thing about ABS, and you pointed out, yes, it has barbed wire. It's like a prison. I thought they also did some shakedowns over there too, where they searched kids. But
I believe so.
Yeah, when they come in, but. The interesting issue is if you want to get, because I had a client that they were trying to put in there because they didn't have a program for older teens. They didn't have an autism program, a high functioning autism program for older teens. So what they did, from research from the parent. Who, by the way, I believe will be attending, your meetings. The interesting thing is that we attempted to get performance data on ABS East.
Mm-hmm.
There isn't any performance data. I mean, on testing, on anything at ABS, it's like a black hole. And when you get performance data, do you know what they say about that? What they do you know what they say about that, Marta?
What do they say about that?
They say, oh, well, the data regarding kids follows the child from their sending school district. So how in the heck are you going to find that? They have all these area school districts that are sending the kids in there, but no way to track as a school how the school is performing. None. Zero. Zippo.
There's no accountability there.
There is zero, in other words. There is zero accountability. So this is effectively I equate this as their Devil's Island. They're sending their undesirables to, this is the Clear Creek Devil's Island.
Yeah, that's what I've heard. I've heard it, referred to as the dumping ground for children that they just don't want to deal with anymore.
And the other part of that is, I've found that time and again, the same attorney that it's interesting parallel. And they also represent the Spring Branch Independent School District. That's also a problem. Oh, by the way, and very, very similar kinds of allegations. Guess what they do when they have a kid that doesn't fit fit within their box? They ship them off to the other ABS.
The ABS West.
They send it to ABS West. It's like it's a default. Oh, you got a problem? You're going to ABS West. And that's the same thing that's going on in corporate.
And it's just totally against FAPE. These children are not getting a free and appropriate public education when they're sent to these places where they're not getting any kind of education. They're not getting their needs met. It's just they really are. They're being sent so that the district doesn't have to deal with them anymore, rather than provide the resources that they need. In this 5-year-old case, the isolation is what exacerbated a lot of the behavior. I mean, he didn't start off just stripping down naked and urinating and defecating. That happened after he was placed for cycles in solitary confinement.
It's
Maybe there were some behaviors prior that were difficult to manage that I can't say. But what I do know is that there is not significant training for teachers and paraprofessionals that are working, or admin and staff for that they're not receiving adequate training. For gifted and talented, they receive 12 hours a year of training, and that's what we are asking for special education, that anybody that is working with our children receive 12 hours a year of training on that child's specific disability. They know who they're getting prior to the next year. So there's no reason why they can't have specific training on autism or cerebral palsy or whatever it is. That's not something that's inconceivable. That's very plausible. And then we think that the general education teachers that are working with the kids with their inclusion plan should have 6 hours of education. They need to know what's going on as well, and they need to be in the loop, and they need to be on the same page. And I think many of them are not opposed to that. They just don't have the training. They don't know how to handle certain things.
Yeah, and another issue here. By the way, you mentioned that you want gag orders lifted.
That's right.
If you're aware, but there was actually a bill that passed the legislature this last session that effectively said that in settlement agreements, now I forget the number, but I think it's like 30,000 or 40,000.
Yes, It's 30,000. Yes, we did look at that. Unfortunately, most parents can't go above 30,000. Most parents can't do 20,000. So all of those cases remain gagged.
Well, yeah, right. So all those below 30 are, but I'm just saying that's something for people to keep in mind. Most private placements are cost more than 30,000 for kids with special needs. So that's just something to keep in mind.
It does. It's a step in the right direction for sure, but we also are trying to be in communication with Texas legislators saying, hey, we appreciate this. However, let's take it a step further. A public school is a government entity. They should not be allowed to gag a parent and a child.
I agree. I agree. Absolutely that there should. And it's public money. So that's public money is something that there shouldn't be a gag on. Another thing is from the political perspective. You guys down where you are, you have Larry Taylor as a state senator. And he is he's the chairperson of the Senate Education Committee. I would hope that you've had conversations with his office, because that's the type of thing that that I think would be helpful.
Well, I've been trying. I've made an attempt a couple of times to contact him and haven't heard a response yet. And then I sent an email to one of the attorneys that works in the office. So I'm hoping that I'll hear back soon and we can get some communication and dialogue going, because we absolutely need to have some some conversations.
Well, I mean, that's something that perhaps I might be able to assist in. I think, there on so many levels. I mean, it seems as though it's bullying. It's bullying, intimidation, to the point of, as you said, parents just. I know of one family that picked up and moved to Virginia. They had enough with a kid in the spectrum, but and the one that I was talking about, that was the one that was back about 10 years ago. They picked up and left. It seems like their tact is bullying and intimidation, and then finally parents just throw up their hands.
Well, and I think that's what they're hoping, what they're wanting. And so me and the 3 other admin of this group decided, you know what, enough is enough. We have got to shine a light on what's going on. We've got to get some investigation going, and we've got to affect some positive change. If there's corrupt dealings going on in the upper administration, then they need to be fired, and we need to find people that have experience and that are going to be willing to partner with parents, that are going to be willing to partner with teachers, and that's our goal. We're not going to stop. We are going to be a force to be reckoned with, and the more and more we grow, the louder and louder we're going to get, and we're just not going to take it anymore. We are going to affect positive change, and that's all there is to it. Because our children deserve to be safe, and they deserve to have a quality education just like any other child does within the district.
Amen to that. I mean, of course, that the district is banking on, their parents will get tired of it. They won't want to work through it. This will all be gone. It'll be just a memory a month from now. And then, as a volunteer organization, people have to, they have to give their own time. They've got stresses with their families, stresses with their children, just stresses, with jobs and whatever. And they will have to throw up their feet, and they won't be able, they'll give up. That's what they're banking on. And I encourage
That's exactly what they're counting on. But they're not going to get it this time.
Well,
we are determined.
Well, you know what? That's what you need to do. I mean, you need to keep the pedal to the metal. You need to keep pushing. You need to go out and try to beat the bushes and find every single parent that that lives in that area to.
Yeah. That is exactly what we're trying to do. In fact, we created a flyer that basically has our presentation condensed to allow people to kind of know what's going on, and we're circulating that. We're also circulating it among state representatives, and we have a protest scheduled for the May 21st board meeting. We're going to be there at 5 o'clock. The board meeting starts at 6, and our goal is to get as many people there as possible, and we're hoping that we can get media coverage. We're working on our press release right now.
Oh, well, that would be great. So where is the meeting being held? Do you have an address? And so if people don't know?
Yeah, let me pull that up.
Okay. And so I would suggest you have as many people as you possibly can be at that meeting.
Yeah, that's what we're trying to get. We want to get anybody. They don't have to have special needs. They don't have to be in our district. They can join our cause and help us fight for the rights of our children.
Yeah, but I think you're right about that. I think it goes beyond special ed. If they're spending $900,000 over 5 years, that's a colossal waste of money paying to a law firm. Colossal.
Yes.
That's hideous. That's hideous that we're paying our tax. You know what? I'm outraged. The rest of the country, most of the people in the country think, oh wow, NASA area, man, they must have great schools over there. No, I don't think so. No.
Well, and that's what a lot of us thought. Most of us moved to this area because we thought this is going to be a great program. I've got that address. It is going to be at the Clear Creek ISD Education Support Center. That is 2425 East Main Street in League City, Texas, 77573.
You want to repeat that for folks so they can jot that down?
Absolutely. It's Clear Creek ISD Education Support Center, 2425 East Main Street, League City, Texas, 77573.
So now, that meeting is on May 21st at 5 p.m. Well, you need to be there at May 21st, 5 p.m., right?
That's correct. Yes. The board meeting will start at 6, and 3 of us are already prepared to speak at the board meeting. But we are going to have our protest start at 5. We want to be there early. We want to get people excited and passionate about standing up for these children that can't stand up for themselves.
Are you all going to be picketing?
Yes.
So you'll be picketing out front?
Yes.
Great. That's great. Okay, that's super. Is there any contact information for if anybody has any additional information, they want to ask for additional information for this? If somebody wanted to email you or...
Oh, absolutely. Yes, we've got an email address. It is CCISD SPED, it's SPED, reform @gmail.com. That's CCISD SPED REFORM @gmail.com.
I would caution people that would be sending in for emails to you. I wouldn't talk about your specific case in that email. In the event that you are involved in some type of litigation with the district, that information could be used in a due process matter, and that information you may not want to. Any of those emails would be subject to discovery in a special education email. But if you want to ask for additional information or talk about it, I would suggest if you send that email to that address, that's what you do.
Yeah, you could send the email, and then we could set up a meeting to talk in person, or we could exchange phone numbers and talk on the phone. But yeah, if you want to initially send an email and just let us know what questions you have, we'd be happy to answer them. We could be happy to talk about what we're doing, what we're trying to accomplish, what the information is for the meeting, for our protest.
Yeah, and okay, we got about 4 minutes left, roughly. So your goal is to have that independent investigation. Now, of course, you got to be careful who the independent investigators are. There's some that they say are independent, and I don't know that truly are independent. So you got to be careful about that. But
we're working with Disability Rights of Texas.
Oh, great!
And we have been given a list of people that we can trust, and so we can submit those names. I mean, we don't necessarily have to have any one person, but it does have to be somebody that is independent, that has been given the stamp of approval by Disability Rights of Texas and by the admin for Parents for CCISD Special Reform.
Great, but perfect. Okay, I mean, having disability rights blessing is great. So, other than the investigation, other than asking for an independent investigation, are you asking for anything else that you want to see happen in the district?
Well, what we want to do is create the Parent Advisory Commission. So we will act as a liaison between the board and parents within special education all over the district. And then we want all gag orders on special needs children and families removed. We want Rogers, Morris, and Grover legal firm fired because they use adversarial and bully tactics. And we have a couple of firms that we know of that other districts have used that would do a better job of, creating a partnership and not just, going for the kill, you know. So we want them to be fired, and then upon the investigation, we want to see the upper administration fired. Dr. Schwartz and Cynthia Peltier and Kevin Livingston, because we believe that they are not looking out for the best interests of these children, that these things are happening under their watch, and they should ultimately be held accountable.
Right. Well, I think they know about it. They absolutely know that they have been under their watch, and they were certainly culpable, in my opinion, to things that have been going on.
Mine too. But we'll do the independent investigation. And kind of, I mean, we've been trying to go about everything in the proper way, going through all the right channels, not to appear as a group of disgruntled malcontents, as we have been called before. We are an organized group that is very passionate about advocating for special needs children, and not just our own personal children, but just children, period, in the district, because 2 of the admin have already pulled their children out, but they are passionate about these children that remain in CCISD and that will come into CCISD in the future. We want this program to be better. They have some other great programs within the district. We want special education to be just as great as those. We want it to be an appeal for people when they come, that they hear what an awesome special education program we have in Clear Creek ISD.
You know what? I think that's fabulous. If we could just take 1 minute, if you could just give some hope to other parents across the country, what they can do if they're having similar issues with their district. What can they do to effectively assert their rights and effectively bring the school boards, bring the administration of school, get the school board's attention? What would you say to them in like 60 seconds?
Absolutely. Well, one of the best things to do is to communicate with other parents. When you feel like you're isolated and alone, you don't realize that there's more people with you. You get numbers together, and you can be a force to be reckoned with. And go and get organized and speak before the board. There's usually a protocol. Look up what that is for your district. In ours, we have to submit a request to speak a week prior, and you usually can have 3 people to be able to speak on a topic. So that's 9 minutes on one specific topic. So do that. Try to send out emails to meet with individual members of the board or groups of smaller ones, and then try to set up a meeting with the superintendent. And then if you still are struggling and you're still not being heard, form a group and do a survey, circulate, and communicate with your community about what is going on. Make some noise, because when you are united, you are a force to be reckoned with, and you cannot be silenced. The bigger you are, the louder you are, and the more you can advocate for your children.
Amen. But Marta, I'm gonna end it at that. Marta, I want you to know that the Special Ed Section 504 Radio Hour salutes you. I salute you. I'm in support of everything you're doing. I think this is great. I think it's time that the tables get turned and we start doing the right thing for kids. And I salute you all and laud your efforts, and anything that I can do to help any way that I can promote on this show, I will do. Marta, I want to thank you for coming on this program. It's been an interesting conversation, and we only wish you well in what you're doing.
Well, thank you so much, and thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
All right, you bet. Well, this is Louis Geigerman of National ARD IEP Advocates. If you want to contact my email at my business, it's nationalardadvocates@gmail.com, nationalardadvocates plural @gmail.com. The website is narda, narda.org, narda.org. If you have any questions or comments about the program, please go to SPED Radio, SPED Radio 103.5 @gmail.com, SPED Radio 103.5 @gmail.com. If you want to tweet me, go to Louis Narda, NARDA. Also, our shows are archived on the website cypressradio.org. cypressradio.org. You go to the link on air, and then my name, Louis Geigerman, and you'll see effectively all our shows pretty much will be archived. You're not going to be able to access other than by a laptop or a desktop, but you can look at past programs. Finally, this show exists by donation. Go to cypressradio.org, and you can make a contribution for any amount. That keeps the lights on, that keeps programming, such as the wonderful work that Marta's doing with her group, and that's what keeps us going. So I invite you to do that. So don't forget the meeting on May 21st at 5 p.m. at the CCISD building at 2425 East Main in League City. Otherwise, I'll see you all on the radio and in the internet. Have a great week.